Hi again. We have one more video for this week, and then I'm going to explain to you one of the assignments that you're also doing. So make sure you watch to the end. You can take these notes under the notes you already did for rational numbers when we were talking about improper versus mixed number versus fraction or decimals. So you can just put this right in there because it is all about rational numbers. So even though it sounds kind of funny, I have this saying that helps me remember rational numbers, okay? So sometimes we come up with these sayings that help us remember something that, so that when I'm on a test or I'm taking an assessment, I kind of have this quick and I can write this down, and then you can kind of work from there by remembering the pieces. So NWIR. And I don't know if you remember, but we were in a drought. We might still be in a drought. I don't know. I don't know if the drought was fixed. But when we were in a drought, this is when I came up with this. So, no water in Riverside. And that's what I tell myself. No water in Riverside. NWIR. And I write that down. Okay? Now, what this stands for is the different type of numbers that we have on the rational side. Okay, the other side, which we're not going to really go into today, is irrational, and we'll talk about that a different day. So, rational numbers. These are all the different kinds. There are natural numbers. Now, you're not going to see this. I hate the way that wrote. I'm going to try that one more time. You're not going to see this in the math book because it is an 8th grade concept. But why learn the rest of them and not learn that one? Okay? Doesn't make it any harder, I promise. So this is whole. This is integer. And this is rational. Now, rational covers all these categories. Okay, everything over here. So let me go through kind of how I sort it out. So I get to a test or I get to an assessment and I go NWIR and I write this out real quick. And then I fill this in, natural, whole, integer, rational. Because once you have the NWIR, you're going to remember natural, whole, integer. Those words are going to come up in your head. Or they're already going to be on the test. Because it's going to say to classify the numbers as either rational, integer, whole, natural. Okay, so if you remember the order, this is then what I do. I go, okay, natural numbers. What are the most simple numbers? So they're also sometimes called counting numbers. And think about if you were in trouble and one of your parents was like, I'm going to give you till the count of 3. You're like, uh-oh. Do they say 0, 1, 2? No, they don't. They say 1, 2, 3. Because there are counting numbers. Okay, so natural starts with 1, 2, 3, and you can continue that on. Whole numbers. I want you to think before I give you the answer. What kind of number, and I kind of give you a hint with my little example, what kind of number would I add in front of 1, 2, and 3? Hopefully you came up with 0. So whole numbers now include 0 and 1 and 2. And 3. Okay, so that kind of makes sense. Now think about it again. What are the other type of numbers that I could add on to this list that are before 0? Hopefully you came up with negative numbers, okay? So now integers are negative numbers. And 0, and 1, and 2, and 3. And what is that last type of number that we just talked about in the last video that we have not put in this list yet? Fractions and decimals. 1/2, 0.5, 0, 1. Oh, I forgot some negatives too. 2, 3. Okay, so I feel like that kind of makes sense. I feel like you could write down NWIR, remember natural, whole, integer, rational, and then kind of fill this in and go, okay, where did I start? I started with 1. I added on a 0. I added on negatives, and then I added on fractions. Okay, that's kind of how I want you to sort this out. Now, let me tell you a few things. If I am a 1, I am natural, I'm whole, I'm integer, and I'm rational. Because 1 sits in all of these categories. But if I'm a 0, I'm whole, I'm integer, I'm rational. I'm not natural anymore. Because I went up a category, you don't include the one below it. You include that category and everything above it. And on a test, they would expect you to be able to say all of them. They don't want you to just say, oh, it's whole. They want you to say it's whole, it's integer, it's rational. Okay? If I'm a -2, I'm an integer and I'm irrational. Now here's the trick question. So I want you to think about it. You have to pause it. Please, please, please think about it. What would a -1/2 be? Okay, pause the video if you have to, but what would a -1/2 be? All right. My guess is a lot of you said an integer because you saw the negative. But are fractions in the integer section? No, they're not. They're only in the rational section. So just because you have a negative number doesn't automatically make it an integer. What it does is it puts it, you got to still look at the number and then put it in the right category. So here we could add to our notes if you would like to help you remember that this could be a -1/2. Okay, that can be a -1/2. Here you have no fractions. So a -1/2 is just rational and that's it. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Just because I brought it up right now, I want to show you something. So go ahead and pause and write down the notes if you need it, because I'm about to erase. So, small total side note, but I'm going to say it while I have your attention. I want you to guess which of these makes the most sense for math. Okay, which of those makes the most sense in math? First of all, I don't want the negative in just chilling out in front. Because if it's just chilling out in front, what if I got rid of the 2? Where's the negative going to go? Okay, so I don't want it like that. And I know that I write it like that sometimes. I know that the math book writes it like that sometimes. But when you're actually doing a word problem, don't write it like that. Or a math problem, don't write it like that. Okay, so let's look at this one. Now, even though all 3 of these are correct, sometimes we have to get rid of this 2 to make our life more simple, okay? And I'll teach you that later. Just believe me for now. When you get rid of that 2, you don't want the negative to go with the 2. You want it to stay with the 1. So just a quick little FYI, that means for your information, I would like you to start practicing putting the negative up in the numerator with that top number. For math that we're going to do later, it's going to make it way easier. Okay? Now, let me finish explaining to you what the NWIR chart is. So if you turn your book page to page, let me see. Well, it really starts on page 49. You're going to see their version of what I'm doing, and they call it a Venn diagram. Don't be too confused about that, okay? So what they do is they draw natural numbers in the middle. Well, they didn't put natural, but I told you already. It's because that's an 8th grade concept, but we might as well learn it right now because that's the right way. Okay, so they're going to have natural, and then NW, they're going to have whole, and then they're going to have NWI, they're going to have integer, and then do they make another circle? They do. Then they're going to have another circle in WIR, and it's going to say rational. And they're going to have examples. Kind of all the way around. Okay? So we're going to ignore my phone ringing for a second. I will call that person back. Okay, so this is the chart that they use in the book. And what this means is if I'm in the natural section, I'm also in the whole and the integer and under the rational. Okay, but if I'm out here in rational, I'm not an integer or whole or natural. So this chart kind of helps you realize that if you're in the middle, you're really all those other categories also. So your assignment is, I want you to make this chart. I think it's boring, super boring. Like we could spice this up a little. That's what I want you to do. This is one of my Get Creative assignments. I know you're already going, oh my goodness, this is a wall-worthy assignment. I want to put this up in my office. I want to stare at all your beautiful work, okay? So I want you to do this on maybe just like it can be on line paper if that's all you have, but maybe a white piece of paper from like the computer, like 8.5 by 11. That would be great. You could do it on a piece of construction paper if you want. This is one of those assignments. Get creative, okay? In the past, when I've had students do this, they really recreate this. I've seen rainbows, I've seen clouds, I've seen Skittles, I've seen bubbles, I've seen all sorts of stuff. I just want you to make this your own. Make it something fun, make it something different. Put those words in there however you want. Obviously in the right order, but you could kind of incorporate them into a drawing. Get some good examples. Don't just write the words. Put some examples like we talked in each category. I do want it somewhat colored, at least in like marker. Don't leave this in pencil, please. And I want it to be something that you kind of enjoy looking at so that when you're practicing this, you can have this chart in front of you. Because this chart is helpful, but is boring. And I would really like to see what you guys come up with, okay? You have one more part of this assignment. So you're making that, I'm going to call it an NWIR chart for natural, whole, integer, and rational. And I want you to recreate it and make it awesome. And then I want you to come up with your own NWIR saying. Okay? So I came up with no water in Riverside. I've had students say no water in Rancho because I used to live in Rancho Cucamonga. I want you to come up with something different, something you can remember. Just a little saying that starts with the N, the W, the I, and the R, and I want you to write it at the top of your chart. Your chart can go horizontal, it can go vertical, you can cut a shape out of it, but somewhere in there I want you to label with your NWIR saying, and hopefully it's something you'll remember so that when you're on the test, if no water in Riverside isn't popping into your head, you have your own saying. Okay, if you have any questions about the project or any of the notes that I just gave you, please email me. Good luck. I can't wait to see what you guys come up with.